two of them.
Oh, I thought you said you were going to.
And that was nothing new then, way back then, because there was a lot of that going on too. They took me to Grandma's house. Probably the best thing that came down the pipe for me. Husband, I got to Grandma's house, he said, you will go to Sunday school every Sunday morning. From Sunday school, you will stay and go to church every Sunday morning. We probably went to Sunday school or church sometime in the evening also. She was also on the board of the church, working with the board. She also taught Sunday school. My aunt taught Sunday school. All of a sudden, they had this arm in a board, and they tried to keep it as still as they could. The town that we came from, Elm Grove, the Methodist church that I went to was about a mile away from our house. We didn't have no vehicles in, so you walked everywhere you went. That was nothing new for me because I walked up to school, to church, to everything I did. As I got older, I now started having to work around the house because to live with grandma, you still had to work. You had your chores to do. Grandma, I call her Mom. That's the only thing I know her as is Mom. But anyhow, I'm about to say Mom anyhow, so you'll know who I'm talking about. Mom helped Grandpa. She took in washing because the house she had a basement in it, 6 rooms, a kitchen, a living room, dining rooms, and a coal furnace. That was new because you always had to have a furnace of some kind. We had an ice box, which was in the kitchen. So you had to carry the ice in, and they would carry the ice in for you. The ashes had to be dumped every day from the furnace. The coal and the furnace had to be fired in the wintertime. The worst part is, the yard that we had was a big yard. The coal had to be dumped out in the back of the yard by the road. Nothing else, the ground was frozen. If it was frozen, they could back the truck clear into what they called a chute. The metal chute about that big, about that wide. Mm-hmm. They would bring the coal into there and dump it down in the chute, and it would get down into the coal bin, down in the basement. Back to Mom, she did I think, probably about 4 or 5 washings for different people to help Grandpa with his money. Grandpa didn't go to church because he worked 6 days a week, so Sunday was his day to rest. The Salvation Army and the churches did more for me and my community than anybody could imagine. The Salvation Army put out a little paper they would deliver almost every Saturday night to different houses in the community. I think it was called a tower, but I'm not sure of that. Grandpa would read that every Sunday morning. Grandma and Aunt Ruth would come home from church, Sunday school, and we'd have dinner then. This was the biggest part of my life was around going to church and Sunday school. The teachers, the Sunday school teachers had little books that the church gave them to study.
Still have them.
Yes. And we had some kind of a book, but it wasn't the same as a teacher's book. But anyhow, we would study what we could, it would just get on Sunday morning. Money, I don't know how the churches made any money then, because it seemed like all we ever got, I ever got, was pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters, all change. Because they couldn't give me too much more than that, because they couldn't afford it. Even my grandparents couldn't afford it, but they probably was the best that I had in my childhood life, was my grandparents. I can't help it but brag about my grandparents. My daughter could tell you what a wonderful, wonderful lady she was. She was a religious lady. She also was a disciplinarian mother. I called her grandma, but she was a good disciplinarian mother. If I was out of hand, she'd let me know I was out of hand. If I did anything wrong, she would let me know that I did something wrong. So everything I did was growing up now. I'm just a kid yet. I'm only 4 or 5 years old. I'm now taken away from my mother and dad. Back to my mother and dad, we lived in nothing but, sorry to say, 3 or 4 room shacks. We moved from, I was born in my grandmother's house, which was a nice home. And after maybe a couple of weeks, they put me in a van or car, however they got to the country. We went about 16 miles out to country roads, dirt roads. Dad worked as a state road commission down there, and he had a horse, a cow, a couple chickens, and that's what we fed off of. The spring house would be just a little spring house where the water run around in a little trough, and had a little drainage ditch, the cold water would run on there, and there would put your milk and butter and so forth on there, and that's how you kept it from cold. Life, as I said, wasn't peaches and cream. I would say it was probably a tough old lifestyle lived. They finally decided that I was okay. They took the board off of me, and I'm not going to school. I walked to school too, and there was probably 4 or 5 schools around that same Elm Grove area. It wasn't a big place. It was only about 6 miles from Wheeling. Elm Grove probably had maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people in it. As I grew up and got older, things got better. I mowed grass, hauled ashes, hauled coal for different, because everybody had to have coal hauled to their bins. So my friend of mine would help me with the hauling coal to my place, then we would haul coal to the other places. That was the biggest part. Mowing grass was the toughest part about the whole thing, was because we didn't have the power mowers that you now have. But ours was all push mowers. I would go to the farm sometime and work for my aunts and uncles, because all my aunts and uncles were farmers, all of them. I don't know how my grandmother got with my grandpa, who wasn't a farmer, he was a mechanic. So quite a difference in their lives, that's about.
But you can say your grandmother was a big source of help and encouragement to you.
Everything.
Right. She's the one that introduced you to the Lord.
She made me, yes, she had me do everything that the good Lord wanted me to do. And if I didn't do that, ought to be punished.
I know.
And
Listen,
that
I
was-
appreciate this. We gotta get to our program now.
Yep.
We'll pick
That's
it up
great.
next time.